Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. First, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. We're real concerned and want your input, want your feelings, and anything you have to say. This is the second meeting. There will be 3 more meetings, one in Drago, Portola, and Quincy. We had a meeting on the 6th in Greenville. There's a pretty good turnout for that. I think you guys have beat that. Congratulations. We want to hear your comments. We'd like to limit it as close as we can to 3 minutes. If I like what you're saying, maybe I'll let you go a little longer. If I don't, I'll call on Greg Haig with that. I don't want any interrupting. I'd like to raise your hands. We will not talk over one another. This is going to be a civil meeting. And I trust this group. Looks like a very civil group. You may state your name, or you don't have to state your name. If you'd like to say something, that's fine. We'll accept written comments. You can mail them in, email, or hand deliver them. We don't care. We want to hear what you guys think. So we'll start out with the roll call. I'll do that. Kim Scott. Matt Fogarty. Michael James.
Here.
Cindy Robinson.
Here.
Debbie Thompson.
Here.
Kevin Goss is in Vegas on business, and I'm Jeff Engel, I'm here. I want to thank this group personally. These are all volunteers on this committee. They've spent a lot of time and hours in researching and reading, and they've done a great job and have been a great input for this whole process. So we all owe our gratitude to them. Thank you, guys. Okay. I think we'll, Randy?
So it's my turn. I'm Randy Wilson. I'm the Plumas County Planning Director. I hope that you've taken advantage of the handouts that are in the back. There's the actual draft ordinance. There's a zoning matrix. Pay attention to the big one that we handed out. The other one is not completely complete. There's a handout on permit processes. What is a special use permit? There's the agenda, of course, and then there's a handout that it's basically 2 pages that summarizes the ordinance. And I want to welcome everybody here. Just a little overview. This is a cannabis ordinance, cannabis ordinance development process overview, cannabis-related issues, new state regulations, Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, and Prop 64. I learned last week there's a new acronym for the new legislation that was passed in the cleanup bill, which I am not even going to try to pronounce at this point. I'm going to go over some state agencies regulating cannabis. The state of California right now is in the process of taking the laws that they've created, and then the agencies create rules. An overview of the draft ordinance and some key points. Cannabis ordinance development overview. The working group was appointed by the Board of Supervisors. This is an all-volunteer group. They do not get paid, as I understand it. That means they drove up here on their own dime. Cannabis working group has developed a draft cannabis ordinance. They've spent several meetings. They weeded through it and found it was time to do public outreach. So we're doing public outreach and comment meetings within each supervisorial district. And just want you to know, we're saying there's a need to develop a local permitting process in order to apply for a state permit. We do not want the state to trump Plumas County. The Cannabis Working Group will be making revisions based on this public input. So it's very important. They want to hear what you have to say. The Cannabis Working Group will then make recommendations to the Planning Commission. So there's a process. This working group makes recommendations to the Planning Commission, who will hold additional hearings, and eventually the Planning Commission will make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors will then approve a draft cannabis ordinance for a CEQA review of the California Environmental Quality Act. It becomes the project description for CEQA review, and it will be conducted, and that will drive potential other changes to the ordinance. And what I'm really trying to say is this thing's evolving. Don't look at it today as this is it. Your input's important, and changes, and lots of public opportunities to have input for changes. Staff recommends that the cannabis activities be taxed at the local level, and a general tax may should be taxed by the board of voters. There's a tie-in ordinance tax. They need to go together. This is a general overview of the ordinance process. Public hearings will be held by both the Planning Commission and the board, not just this group. And again, changes to the ordinance are always possible. Things really show up real well, but the Board of Supervisors has authorized the development of a cannabis ordinance, but is not bound to approve such an ordinance if the board in the end so chooses not to. So just because the board has authorized this doesn't mean they're going to have to, they're bound to approve something in the end. The board held 2 public hearings regarding putting a moratorium in place, but decided not to impose that moratorium to prohibit activities until an ordinance was adopted. And they happened last year. Cannabis-related issues. Cannabis cultivation has been illegal and is not regulated in the past by either the state or Cannabis County. The state's got new laws. We're all trying to bring it into some sort of legal regulated system, even facing the fact that it's still a Schedule I drug for the federal government. Cannabis cultivation has not been taxed in the past. The state of California, through its elements of the distribution system and everything, will be taxing cannabis. I think there's an exemption right now for medical cannabis, and please correct me if I'm wrong there. There's been environmental degradation, and I'm not really saying that it's been huge here, but I think it's well known that cannabis gardens have caused some environmental degradation. Of course, there's the cartels and violence. That's a big issue here, the cartels in the forest, national forest lands. And I know our sheriff's department works with the forest people on some of those issues. There are no permitted cannabis dispensaries in Plumas County. Other cities and counties in the state have had them, but we don't. There are no permitted cannabis manufacturing where you take the cannabis plant and you manufacture it into different products, oils, soaps, waxes, I mean, it's an endless array of them. Neighborhood compatibility issues with cultivation and cannabis-related activities. I want to kind of emphasize the neighborhood compatibility issues. What this ordinance is striving to achieve is compatibility between the neighborhoods and growers and everything else that occur. New state regulations, MRSA, medical, and Prop 64. It was passed by the state of California, allowing for regulation of medical cannabis cultivation, dispensing, and manufactured products. Along last election, Prop 64 passed by the voters, which allows for recreational use of cannabis for those over 21 years and older, and also provides for recreational dispensing, manufacturing. In Plumas County, Prop 64 passed by 51%. And again, both laws regulate cannabis. Under both laws, local permits or licenses are required, should we have those, in place in order for the state to issue any permits. Right now, these 2 ordinances, the ordinance medical cannabis state legislation and Prop 64 have been brought together in new state legislation. And this is a copy of that. And you can see blue and red, that's all the changes they made. And I printed it, it's about 120 pages long. I think the state, everybody's trying to figure out what it says. State agencies regulating cannabis, the Department of Fish and Wildlife is involved, the Regional Water Quality Control Board. They've actually, I think they're in the process of promulgating their rules. There's been some draft rules for our area. The Department of Food and Ag is charged by all this to issue the state cultivation permits. The Department of Health, what I believe is going to be involved in the manufacturing. The Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE. Well, if you cut a tree down and it violates their rules to grow cannabis, you're in trouble. So they're involved if land is clearing for cannabis growing. And they have processes, they have a timber harvest plan process, and what they call a less than 3 acre conversion, where you're converting the forest lands to another use. And then there's the Bureau of Cannabis Control. I did get that new name for the legislation, and I think they're charged with issuing the dispensary permits. All these agencies have separate permit requirements and fees, so to get a permit through the state, you're going to have to pay their fees and meet all their standards. Several Plumas County departments may be involved in local permitting if the cannabis ordinance is approved. My department, the planning department, the building department for any construction activities that require building permits, the Department of Environmental Health, probably related to the manufacturing, and of course the Ag Commissioner. The state could contract with the Ag Commissioner to issue the state permits. At this point, I brought a zoning map of Plumas County. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. And I'm going to bring up the county GIS. And the computer doesn't want me to completely dump out. Get it? Oh, there we go. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. This is Chester. Well, let's start with Chester. This is the zoning map of Chester. You can see some blue colors on that zoning sheet, and we can zoom in. The blue, if you can follow my little cursor, is generally the residentially zoned properties. The gray is what we call MR, or multifamily residential. The red is commercial type zoning. And then you have purple, which is the industrial. You have some recreation open space. And then right up here outside of Chester, you have some ag preserve property. With that, I'm going to zoom out and give you more of the Eleanor Basin. So one of the other things I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off the zoning. Let me do that. And what you see here, you see this blue line around Chester. The Plumas County General Plan designates that as the town of Chester. The blue line around the Eleanor Peninsula and Hamilton Branch, the Plumas County General Plan designates that as the town of Peninsula and Hamilton Branch. The purplish color here is Eleanor West, and the Plumas County General Plan designates that as a master plan community. And then you have Prattville as a community, you have East Shore as designated community, and then you have Canyon Dam. So I'll turn back on the zoning. The green, the light, I think the dark green is TPZ zoning, timber preserve zoning. You can see the Eleanor Basin has a lot of that. I can tell you the current version of the ordinance says no cannabis cultivation on timber production lands. We also have some general forest. This little ag preserve that I've got my cursor on, and I hope you can see it, I think that's Humbug Valley. That's private land, and that's in the process of going to the MIDU consortium. So I'm going to turn off some things and turn on something else. This is an interesting map because this is what's called the National Wetlands Inventory. And it's important. I call it kind of our first test if a property has wetlands on it. It doesn't absolutely mean there's wetlands there. Wetlands is a combination of hydritic soils and hydritic plants, and it really takes an expert to identify them. But this is the National Wetlands Inventory. And if you look up here where you have some ag preserve land to the east of Chester, it's national wetlands, which that means is the Water Quality Control Board would not issue any outdoor growing permits for that area. So it's it's a state constraint in a way. So just giving you a flavor for the zoning and what's going on in the Amador Basin. And one of the questions, and I'm going to turn around when I asked it, how many people in this room know the zoning on their property? Could you please raise their hands? But less than 50%. Okay, so we're dealing with a zoning code that has zoning districts on it, and you will all live on property that has a zoning on it. Some of you live in the master plan communities. So when you look at this, you got to look at what, you have to understand what your zoning is. Becky has provided you with a sheet that gives you some direction to go to the county website to find out some zoning, some department contacts to find out your zoning. So when you look at this, remember that the basis is what is going to be allowed in the zones, and that's what this matrix tells you. I wish that I could get about 75 to 80% hands. The last meeting was less than 50% too. So it's not uncommon for people to not know what their zoning is, but when you're looking at a regulation like this and you think it may impact you, I suggest you find out what your zoning is. Back to the PowerPoint. The objectives of the ordinance: effectively address neighborhood compatibility issues with cultivation and cannabis-related activities, set standards as allowed under state law for personal recreational cannabis cultivation. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, and your handout talks about that. With the passage of Prop 64, the Adult Recreational Act, every parcel with a residence can have 6 plants. And the state has said that you can have 6 plants. In local jurisdictions, you can't stop that, but you can ban it from being outdoors in the backyard, or put standards on it from being outdoors, or just force it all indoors. Right now, this proposal, and I'm going to try to go over that. And I'll read what is on the sheet. When voters approved Prop 64, adult recreational use was legalized. This allows each adult to grow up to 6 plants with no more than 1 person cannabis cultivation per residence. In other words, 6 plants per residence. If you have 2 adults, they can't grow 12 plants in the residence. They can only grow 6. Medical patients right now can grow up to 100 square feet of cannabis for their own medical use, and caregivers can grow up to 200 square feet, meaning they're growing for other patients, but there may be no more than 2 personal medical cultivations at a residence. In other words, they're stuck with the 200 square feet. This ordinance allows 6 plants to be grown outdoors if the parcel is greater than 1/3 of an acre in size, providing all other requirements, and they have standards for setbacks, security, structures, greenhouses, fences, screening and such in the ordinance. And then on parcels less than 1 acre in size, only 3 plants can be, you didn't fix that one. Yeah, less than 1/3 of an acre, we had a mistake here, less than 1/3 of an acre in size, only 3 plants can be grown outdoors, or 6 plants indoors, providing that all of the requirements are met. So that's the recreational side as it stands right now in the ordinance. The ordinance is designed to set standards for commercial cannabis activities, including cultivation, dispensing, and cannabis-related manufacturing. So you'll see in the ordinance, and sort of summarized in the cheat sheet, it's attempting to set some standards of again, related to compatibility. And provide a pathway for illegal cultivation on private lands to become legal. Of course, the market and everybody growing has been illegal, so this is a pathway to become legal. It's also to align local cannabis rules with state regulations, providing a pathway from local permitting to state permitting. That state, we issue a permit, and then the state issues a permit. They coordinate with us. Some reports. The ordinance is trying to set standards for personal recreational growing. It is a development commercial permitting process. Standards set for commercial cultivation, including setback, security, fencing, and inspections. Overview of zoning matrix and overview of the ordinance summary. Those are handouts, and you have those tonight. I'm not going to really get into a lot of the details. And then public comments for the audience will be taken. I think we're at the point for public comment.
Okay, anybody like to come up and make some public comments? You got a great shirt?
You want me to come up there?
Yeah, please.
The name is Aaron Sandel, S-D-A-N-D-E-L. And I have more than comments, I have questions that may develop in the comments. First question that I have is, has anybody checked with the state of Colorado, where they have legalized marijuana throughout the whole state, to see what the impact has been, not just financially, but financially is important, but socially? I'm thinking of the small towns in Colorado, where there's nothing more than what we have here in Chester. And what happens to young people in those small towns with legalized marijuana, I think is a good point for somebody to check. That's the first question I have. Second question I have is, anybody talk to the school principal, high school principal here, to see what concerns he or she, it's a he by the way, might have in terms of impact on young people? I know the law says 21 years of age, but don't kid yourself. Young people have a way to get around that very, very easily. And so what does the school think? And in addition to the school, have you talked to the PTA? Have you talked to the Board of Education and gotten their impact or their information? I think it's very, very important for young people to hear the comments of those who have responsibility for them during the day. So I would urge that you do that. The third question I have is, and this, I don't know if you know, well, I look for the answer to this. What additional financial resources will accrue to the county because of the addition of cannabis as an industry or a job source here? Are we looking at just sales tax off the sale of cannabis? Or are we looking at some more financial possibilities for the county? The county